Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadhi Prachatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Welcome to Thursday Srimad Bhagavatam session. Sorry, we couldn't have the session last Thursday. Today we will be doing 31st chapter of third canto, where Lord Kapila explains movements of the living entities. So after this, we will there will be just one chapter left in third canto, that is 37 chapter, and then we can move on to fourth canto. So let's begin the session. Maybe Anuradha Mataji, would you like to read?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. So from text 1 to 11, please.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji. Lord Kapila's instructions on the movements of the living entities. Text 1. The personality of Godhead said, under the supervision of the Supreme Lord and according to the result of his work, the living entity, the soul, is made to enter into the womb of a woman through the particle of male semen to assume a particular type of body. Text 2. On the first night, the sperm and the ovum mix, and on the fifth night, the mixture ferments into a bubble. On the 10th night, it develops into a form like a plum, and after that, it gradually turns into a lump of flesh or an egg, as the case may be. Text 3. In the course of a month, a head is formed, and at the end of 2 months, the hands, feet, and other limbs take shape. By the end of 3 months, the nails, fingers, toes, body hair, bones, and skin appear, as do the organ of the generation and the other apertures in the body, namely the eyes, nostrils, ears, mouth, and anus. Text 4. Within 4 months from the date of conception, the 7 essential ingredients of the body, namely child, blood, flesh, fat, bone, marrow, and semen, come into existence. At the end of 5 months, hunger and thirst make themselves felt. And at the end of 6 months, the fetus enclosed by the amnion begins to move on the right side of the abdomen. Text 5. Deriving its nutrition from the food and drink taken by the mother, the fetus grows and remains in that abominable residence of stools and urine, which is the breeding place of all kinds of worms. Text 6. Bitten again and again all over the body by the hungry worms in the abdomen itself, the child suffers terrible agony because of his tenderness. He thus becomes unconscious moment after moment because of the terrible condition. Text 7. owing to the mother's eating bitter, pungent foodstuffs or food which is too salty or too sour. The body of the child incessantly suffers pains which are almost intolerable. Text 8. Placed within the amnion and covered outside by the intestines, the child remains lying on one side of the abdomen, his head turned towards his belly, and his back and neck arched like a bow. Text 9. The child thus remains just like a bird in a cage without freedom of movement. At that time, if the child is fortunate, he can remember all the troubles of his past 100 births, and he grieves wretchedly. What is a possibility of peace of mind in that condition? Text 10. Thus endowed with the development of consciousness from the 7th month after his conception, the child is tossed downwards by the airs that press the embryo during the weeks preceding delivery. Like the worms born of the same filthy abdominal cavity, he cannot remain in one place. Text 11. The living entity in this frightful condition of life, bound by 7 layers of material ingredients, prays with folded hands, appealing to the Lord who has put him in that condition. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Thank you, Mataji, Anuradha Mataji. Appreciate it. So we've been reading this conversation between Vidura and Maitreya. It started a long time ago, and it will continue. In the 4th canto also, it will continue. So Vidura left Hastinapur and he went on a pilgrimage because he gave some good advice to Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana. But Duryodhana, wicked person, insulted Vidura. And so he decided to just leave that Hastinapur, capital city of Bharat. So he went on a pilgrimage. He met Uddhav and he had some discussion with Uddhav. Then Uddhav directed Vidura to Maitreya, who was residing on the bank of Ganges near Haridwar. And so Vidura asked a number of questions and to Maitreya, and Maitreya started answering one after another. And in that discussion, so this also came Lord Kapila. Kardama Muni's story came, and Kardama Muni had 9 daughters and 1 son. And Kardama Muni had left, for forest, and he got his daughters married to the 9 different sages, and so Mother Devahuti stayed at home with her son Lord Kapila. Lord Kapila is not different from is one of the incarnations of Lord Vishnu. So he's explaining to his mother a number of things about devotion and path of jnana, speculative knowledge, Ashtanga yoga, mystic yoga system, and also pure devotional service. During that teachings of Kapila, Devahuti, in chapter 29, she had put forward 3 questions. So the first question was about bhakti, a devotion. She wanted to know more details about devotion. And the second question was about time. How does the time control everything? So both these 2 questions were answered in chapter 29 itself. Details on devotion, and as well as details on time, how time controls everything, were answered in detail in chapter 29. And the third question she asked in chapter 29 was about the process of birth and death of a living entity, the cycle of birth and death of a living entity. So that question, is answered in chapter 30, 31, and 32. So in the previous chapter, we had seen, in chapter 30, we had seen how, a living entity goes through pain in the youth and old age, and at the time of death, even after death. Lord Kapila describes the activities, life and death of a materialistic person. How does he behave? What pains he goes through? What kind of pain he experiences, a materialistic person? But at the near death experience was also given. He sees the servants of Lord Yama, and he passes urine and stool like that. So near death experience at death, and then he was taken by the constables of Lord Yama to the hell, and then a hellish experience was also described. After leaving the body, this materialistic person, sinful materialistic person who is not engaged in the devotional service of the Lord, is eventually taken to the hell. And then the hellish punishment is also described, how he is put into various hells there. And at the end of chapter 30, Lord Kapila says, after going through all these miserable hellish conditions, and then many births in the lower forms, he becomes purified and is reborn as a human being. So after the punishment in the hell, then he is put into that living entity is put into all the species of life. And there are 8,400,000 species. And so slowly, is kind of, upgraded from one species to another species, lower species to slightly higher species, both body and as well as conscious wise. Evolution, bodily consciousness is evolved. So after going through all the species, then one is awarded a human form of life at the end. So Lord Kapila in this chapter is talking about how this living entity, after passing through all these species of lower species of life, attains human birth, undergoes great pain in the womb during the birth, as an infant, as a child. Okay, the punishment is completed in the hell, and then the living entity has passed through all the lower species of life. Then what happens? How that person gets the human form, and what happens in the womb, and then after comes out, what happens after the child, after the living entity comes out of the womb, what happens? How the experience, the living entity undergoes pain, and what does this living entity do within the womb of a mother is explained here. Embryology is given here. We have, at least I know that there is one doctor on the call on our session. Padma Mataji is a psychiatrist, Um, yeah, so it is quite interesting, when my wife, some of you know that she's a GP. So when she first read this this section of Bhagavatam, she was amazed how this, how this was described in Srimad Bhagavatam many thousands of years ago. Mm. The formation of the embryo within a womb of a mother is fully described, embryology. Mm. So the first verse is very important. So I'll just recite that. So this is a memory verse if you want to memorize. Yeah. And Srila Prabhupada quoted this verse time and again. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Karmana Dhaiva Netrena Janturdeho Papadyate Striyaha Pravishta Udharam Pumsorethaha Kanashrayaha. So how the living entity is awarded a particular type of body. It is not accidental. It happens, a particular living entity is born in a particular place to particular individuals, in a particular color or particular environment, particular sociological circumstances, whatever all the circumstances, they are not random, they are not accidental. It happens karmana daivanetrena, based on these two things, under the supervision of the Supreme Lord and according to karma, one's karma, the living entity enters into a particular woman. So it is not accidental. One is born here, one is born there, one is born as a male, one is born as a female. It is not random, it is not accidental. Karmana Daivanitrena, these are the two words. Under the supervision of the Lord and as per the previous karma. One gets one type of body. And it is mentioned that living entity enters into the semen particle of a male person, and then when they unite, that living entity then enters into the womb of a mother. That is given here. So, and the stages from then, the development of embryo is given. So the sperm and womb mix, and then fifth night, the mixture ferments into a bubble, and on the 10th day, develops into a form like a plum. And then on the first month, in the first month, head is formed. Second month, hands, feet, and other limbs are developed. In the third month, nails, fingers, toes, body hair, bones, skin, and eyes, nostrils, ears, mouth, and anus are developed. And in the fourth month, seven dhatus like blood, flesh, fat, bone marrow, etc. are developed. In the fifth month onwards, the embryo develops hunger and thirst. And whatever mother eats, the baby eats that food through the placenta. The nutrients are supplied. And it is said that if mother eats too salty, too pungent, too spicy food, the baby feels quite disturbed, experiences agony. But nobody knows that the baby is experiencing agony because of this pungent food that is eaten by mother. There are worms inside. They bite the living entity, and it is so tight. The embryo is confined in that amniotic membrane. So 6 months. In the 6th month, the child moves to the right side of the abdomen, and in the 7th month, this embryo develops consciousness. 7th month. And so in the womb also, we said that the child undergoes pain, and Prabhupada condemns that the abortion is a great sin. It is a great sin. Infanticide is like killing an embryo is a great sin. So one should never do that. And child, if this fetus is fortunate enough, that living entity will remember past 100 births. Not everyone, only the fortunate living entities, when they are in the womb of mother, they will remember their past 100 births. And they repent. Why am I doing this? I'm repeatedly taking birth, repeatedly dying, and repeatedly entering into womb of another mother. Why am I doing this? And if this fortunate living entity is a devotee in the past life, it does offer wonderful prayers to the Lord, situated within the womb of a mother, being situated in the womb of a mother. So let's read a couple of purports from this section. Anuradha Mataji, you can help me so we can do text 9 we will read. Text 9, it says, the child thus remains just like a bird in a cage without freedom of movement. At that time, if the child is fortunate, he can remember all the troubles of his past 100 births, and he grieves wretchedly. What is the possibility of peace of mind in that condition? So, Anuradha Mataji, if you can kindly read the purport, that would be nice.
Yes, Prabhuji. After birth, the child may forget about the difficulties of his past lives. But when we are grown up, we can at least understand the grievous tortures undergone at birth and death by reading the authorized scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam. If we do not believe in the scriptures, that is a different question. But if we have faith in the authority of such descriptions, then we must prepare for our freedom in the next life. That is possible in this human form of life. One who does not take heed of these indications of suffering in human existence is said to be undoubtedly committing suicide. It is said that this human form of life is the only means for crossing over the nescience of Maya, or material existence. We have a very efficient boat in the human form of body, and there is a very expert captain, the spiritual master. The scriptural injunctions are like favorable winds. If we do not cross over the ocean of the nescience of material existence In spite of all these facilities, then certainly we are all intentionally committing suicide. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Very powerful purport. This is, your homework. You can go and read this purport again and meditate upon it. So when the living entity comes out of the mother womb, the living entity completely forgets what type of difficulties it had experienced. Living entity had experienced. But Prabhupada says we can, grown up, we should understand these difficulties. So human life is actually meant for crossing over this Maya, material existence. Material existence means simply repeated birth and repeated cycle. That's it, nothing else. And repeatedly undergoing pain. And it is said that padam padam yad vipadham na tesham, there is a danger at every step in this material world. Prabhupada writes that this human form, this material world is compared to ocean, and the human form of life is like a boat, very efficient boat. And the spiritual master is the captain of this ship. And scriptures are favorable winds which help, push the boat. So yes, we got the human form, and some or other we came in touch with this wonderful movement. We have a spiritual master who is the captain of the ship, and our spiritual master is also given so many wonderful literatures. They act as a favorable winds. So, and the final statement by Prabhupada in this purport: if we do not cross over the ocean of nescience of material existence, in spite of all these facilities, then eternally we are all intentionally committing suicide. Sorry, certainly. Right? Because of then certainly we are all intentionally committing suicide. Very powerful statement by Prabhupada. So reading scriptures will help us remind us this situation. So let's read the purport to text 11 as well. Mataji, translation and purport, please. Anuradha Mataji.
Ji Prabhuji. Translation. The living entity in this frightful condition of life, bound by 7 layers of material ingredients, prays with folded hands, appealing to the Lord who has put him in that condition. Purport. It is said that when a woman is having labor pains, she promises that she will never again become pregnant and suffer from such a severely painful condition. Similarly, when one is undergoing some surgical operation, he promises that he will never again act in such a way to become diseased and have to undergo medical surgery. Or when one falls into danger, he promises that he will never again make the same mistake. Similarly, the living entity, when put into a hellish condition of life, prays to the Lord that he will never again commit sinful activities and have to be put into the womb for repeated birth and death. In the hellish condition within the womb, the living entity is very much afraid of being born again. But when he is out of the womb, when he is in full life and good health, he forgets everything and commits again and again the same sins for which he was put into that horrible condition of existence. Thank you, Prabhuji.
So we just forget. We were all once upon a time in the same situation of this living entity, like this living entity who is going to offer prayers. But after coming out of mother's tummy, so we had forgotten. He forgets everything and commits again and again same sins, for which he was put into that horrible condition of existence. It's a vicious cycle. So to break this cycle, we have to take to the process of devotional service and chant this mantra: Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, so next we will read the prayers by this living entity within the womb of a mother. Mm. This the human soul prays, and as I mentioned, only devotee will offer these prayers in the womb. A materialistic person in the womb will not be able to offer these prayers. Mm. Um, so only a devotee. These prayers of living entity in the womb are mentioned here, do not indicate that every living entity prays in this manner. Only living entity who is a devotee prays like this. Hmm. Right. Text 12 to 21. Let me see. Should I ask Bhuvaneshwari Radha Mataji?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Text 12 to 21, please.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Text 12. The human soul says, I take shelter of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who appears in his various eternal forms and walks on the surface of the world. I take shelter of him only because he can give me relief from all fear, and from him I have received this condition of life, which is just befitting my impious activities. Text 13. I, the pure soul, appearing now bound by my activities, am lying in the womb of my mother by the arrangement of Maya. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him who is also here with me, but who is unaffected and changeless. He is unlimited, but he is perceived in the repentant heart. To him I offer my respectful obeisances. Text 14. I am separated from the Supreme Lord because of my being in this material body, which is made of 5 elements, and therefore my qualities and senses are being misused. Although I am essentially spiritual, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental to material nature and the living entities, because he is devoid of such a material body, and because he is always glorious in his spiritual qualities, I offer my obeisances unto him. Text 15. The human soul further prays. The living entity is put under the influence of material nature and continues a hard struggle for existence on the path of repeated birth and death. This conditional life is due to his forgetfulness of his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, without the Lord's mercy, how can he again engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord? Text 16. No one other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the localized Paramatma, the partial representation of the Lord, is directing all inanimate and animate objects. He is present in the 3 phases of time, past, present, and future. Therefore, the conditioned soul is engaged in different activities by his direction. And in order to get free from the threefold miseries of this conditional life, we have to surrender unto him only. Text 17. Fallen into a pool of blood, stool, and urine within the abdomen of his mother, his own body scorched by the mother's gastric fire, the embodied soul, anxious to get out, counts his months and prays, O my Lord, when shall I, a wretched soul, be released from this confinement? Text 18. My dear Lord, by your causeless mercy, I am awakened to consciousness. Although I am only 10 months old, for this causeless mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the friend of all fallen souls, there is no way to express my gratitude but to pray with folded hands. Text 19. The living entity is another type of body. The living entity in another type of body sees only by instinct. He knows only the agreeable and disagreeable sense perceptions of that particular body. But I have a body in which I can control my senses and can understand my destination. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by whom I have been blessed with this body, and by whose grace I can see him within and without. Text 20. Therefore, my Lord, although I am living in a terrible condition, I do not wish to depart from my mother's abdomen to fall again into the blind well of materialistic life. Your external energy, called Dev Maya, at once captures the newly born child, and immediately false identification, which is the beginning of the cycle of continual birth and death, begins. Text 21. Therefore, without being agitated anymore, I shall deliver myself from the darkness of nescience with the help of my friend, clear consciousness. Simply by keeping the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu in my mind, I shall be saved from entering into the wombs of many mothers for repeated birth and death. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. There will be at least one or two purports we'll be reading, so please be alert. So, as you can see that, Jiva, the living entity, being in the womb of mother, after 7 months, offers prayers to the Lord. So the living entity says, "My Lord, I take shelter of your lotus feet because of my ignorance, because of my past reactions. I am put into this situation, and please be merciful unto me." Like that, he offers, the living entity offers prayers, and he feels quite discomfort. When will I get out of this this difficult situation I'm in now? But again, living entity says, "By your causeless mercy, I'm awakened to consciousness." And at the end, the living entity says, I don't want to, get out, because if I come out of this situation, your illusory energy will influence me, and I will forget. I will not have the same consciousness when I come out of this situation. So better I remain here. And, if I remain here in this difficult situation, I'm able to think of you. And then thinking of you means I am delivering myself. This is how the living entity offers, human soul offers prayers. And I selected two purports from this one, text 17. Mataji, Bhuneshwara Mataji.
Yeah. You want me to read the translation again, Prabhuji, or just purport?
Don't worry, just purport. Thank you.
Okay. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The precarious condition of the living entity within the womb of his mother is described here. On one side of where the child is floating is the heat of gastric fire, and on the other side are urine, stool, blood, and discharges. After 7 months, the child, who has regained his consciousness, feels the horrible condition of his existence and prays to the Lord, counting the months until he is released. He becomes greatly anxious to get out of the confinement. The so-called civilized man does not take account of this horrible condition of life, and sometimes for the purpose of sense gratification, he tries to kill the child by methods of contraception or abortion. Unserious about the horrible condition in the womb, such persons continue in materialism, grossly misusing the chance of the human form of life. The word Krupa na dihi is significant in this verse. Di means intelligence, and Krupana means miserly. Conditioned life is for persons who are of miserly intelligence or who do not properly utilize their intelligence. In the human form of life, the intelligence is developed, and one has to utilize that developed intelligence to get out of the cycle of birth and death. One who does not do so is a miser, just like a person who has immense wealth but does not utilize it, keeping it simply to see. A person who does not actually utilize his human intelligence to get out of the clutches of Maya, the cycle of birth and death, is accepted as miserly. The exact opposite of miserly is udar, very magnanimous. A Brahman is called udar because he utilizes his human intelligence for spiritual realization. He uses that intelligence to preach Krishna consciousness for the benefit of the public, and therefore he is magnanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. And then again, wonderful point by Prabhupada here. Prabhupada says that a person who does not actually utilize this human intelligence to get out of the clutches of Maya is actually a miser. But if a person uses that wonderful opportunity of human birth, that is called udhar, or a magnanimous person. So a magnanimous person uses this human form for cultivation of spiritual life. What that person does is he also gives this spiritual knowledge to others. Not only that person practices, but gives the spiritual knowledge to others so that others can be delivered. Let's see. Okay, Mataji, this purport as well, please. You may read the translation for this.
Okay. Translation. My dear Lord, by your causeless mercy, I'm awakened to consciousness. Although I'm only 10 months old, for this causeless mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the friend of all fallen souls, there is no way to express my gratitude but to pray with folded hands. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, intelligence and forgetfulness are both supplied by the Supersoul, sitting with the individual soul within the body. When he says that a conditioned soul is very serious about getting out of the clutches of the material influence, the Supreme Lord gives intelligence internally as Supersoul and externally as the spiritual master, or as an incarnation of the personality of Godhead himself. He helps by speaking instructions such as Bhagavad Gita. The Lord is always seeking the opportunity to reclaim the fallen souls to his abode, the kingdom of God. We should always feel very much obliged to the personality of Godhead, for he is always anxious to bring us into the happy condition of eternal life. There is no sufficient means to repay the personality of Godhead for his act of benediction. Therefore, we can simply feel gratitude and pray to the Lord with folded hands. This prayer of the child in the womb may be questioned by some atheistic people. How can a child pray in such a nice way in the womb of his mother? Everything is possible by the grace of the Lord. The child is put into such a precarious condition externally, but internally he is the same, and the Lord is there. By the transcendental energy of the Lord, everything is possible. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. So, so the Lord is always seeking the opportunity to reclaim. He's actually, rather than, what is the way to best express this? He's more anxious for us to come over to him than how much we are anxious to go back to Godhead. He's actually more anxious, and that's why Lord comes and reclaims the fallen souls, and he performs pastimes. All these things will help us. Why does he create so many wonderful pastimes? All these pastimes, they act as a medicine for our conditioned disease. Just by reading and hearing on a regular basis, our conditional life is destroyed, and then we can go back home Godhead. Let's go back to the next section. So from text 22 to 31, who would like to read? Anyone, any volunteer? Meena Jantani Mataji, long time. Are you there?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Would you like to read?
Yeah, sure.
Text 22 to 31.
Okay, reading from the phone itself, from your screen, okay?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna. Lord Kapila continued, the 10-month-old living entity has these desires even while in the womb. But while he thus extols the Lord, the wind that helps parturition propels him forth with his face turned downward so that he may be born. Text 23. Pushed downward all of a sudden by the wind, a child comes out with great trouble, head downward, breathless and deprived of memory due to severe agony. Text 24. The child thus falls on the ground, smeared with stool and blood, and plays just like a worm germinated from the stool. He loses his superior knowledge and cries under the spell of Maya. Text 25. After coming out of the abdomen, the child is given to the care of persons who are unable to understand what he wants, and thus he is nursed by such persons. Unable to refuse whatever is given to him, he falls into undesirable circumstances. Text 26. Laid down on a foul bed infested with sweat and germs, the poor child is incapable of scratching his body to get relief from his itching sensation, to say nothing of sitting up, standing, or even moving. Text 27. In his helpless condition, gnats, mosquitoes, bugs, and other germs bite the baby whose skin is tender, just as smaller worms bite a big worm. The child deprived of his wisdom cries bitterly. Text 28. In this way, the child passes through his childhood, suffering from different kinds of distress and attains boyhood. In boyhood also, he suffers pain over desires to get things he can never achieve. And thus, due to ignorance, he becomes angry and sorry. Text 29. With the growth of the body, the living entity, in order to vanquish his soul, increases his false prestige and anger, and thereby creates enmity towards similarly lusty people. Text 30. By such ignorance, the living entity accepts the material body, which is made of 5 elements, as himself. With this misunderstanding, he accepts non-permanent things as his own and increases his ignorance in the darkest region. Text 31. For the sake of the body, which is a source of constant trouble to him and which follows him because he is bound by ties of ignorance and fruitive activities, he performs various actions which cause him to be subjected to repeated birth and death.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Haribu.
So in this section, Lord Kapila, he explains the suffering of living entity after coming out of the womb of mother. So 10 months, it is said here. These are it's a Vedic calendar. So Vedic calendar, you have 2 fortnights. A lunar month is 28 days, something like that. So the 10-month old living entity, he comes out upside down with great difficulty and breathless and deprived of memory. So there was a memory inside, but when the living entity comes out of the mother womb, that memory is lost. And he falls on the ground, smeared with stool and blood. And after that, he can't express his own desires, his own feelings. The living entity is not able to express feelings or anything like that. People may come and say, oh, cute baby. They may say so many things, but they'll not be able to understand the feelings of that baby. And sometimes, mosquitoes, bugs, and other germs bite the baby because the skin is tender. And this is a suffering. Suffering is mentioned, how there is suffering. Sometimes there is hunger, not to know how to express, thirst, not to know how to express everything. The baby cries. And even in the boyhood, there is suffering, there are so many desires, but their desires are not fulfilled. You ask these, some children, and they say that there is too much homework. That is a pain. So there are so many desires, but they are not able to have, not all the desires are not being fulfilled. And after growing, then the living entity increases his false prestige and anger, and thereby creates enmity towards similar lusty people. And then the living entity develops high-end mind concept, aham mameti, I'm this body, everything belongs to me. And this way, the living entity suffers and commits sinful actions. So, and we'll move on to the next section, and the living entity with the bad association, then the living entity falls down further. So let's read the next section, text 32 to 42. Madhav Kumar Prabhu, are you there? Or I can ask someone else. Satish Prabhu?
Yes, I can.
Satish Prabhu, thank you. Text 32.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah.
So if therefore the living entity again associates with the path of unrighteousness, influenced by sensually minded people engaged in the pursuit of sexual enjoyment and the gratification of the palate, he again goes to hell as before. Text 33. He becomes devoid of truthfulness, cleanliness, mercy, gravity, spiritual intelligence, shyness, austerity, fame, forgiveness, control of the mind, control of the senses, fortune, and all such opportunities. Text 34. One should not associate with a coerced fool who is bereft of the knowledge of self-realization and who is no more than a dancing dog in the hands of a woman. Text 35. The infatuation and bondage which accrue to a man from attachment to any other object is not as complete as that resulting from attachment to a woman or to the fellowship of men who are fond of women. Text 36. At the sight of his own daughter, Brahma was bewildered by her charms and shamelessly ran up to her in the form of a stag when she took the form of a hind. Text 37. Amongst all kinds of living entities begotten by Brahma, namely men, demigods, and animals, none but the sage Narayana is immune to the attraction of Maya in the form of women. Text 38. Just try to understand the mighty strength of my Maya in the shape of woman, who by the mere movement of her eyebrows can keep even the largest conquerors of the world under her grip. Text 39. One who aspires to reach the culmination of yoga and has realized his self by rendering services unto me should never associate with an attractive woman. For such a woman is declared in the scripture to be the gateway to hell for the advancing devotee. Text 40. The woman created by the Lord is the representation of Maya, and one who associates with such Maya by accepting services must certainly know that this is the way of death, just like a blind well covered with grass. Text 41. A living entity who, as a result of attachment to a woman in his previous life, has been endowed with the form of a woman, foolishly looks upon Maya in the form of a man, her husband, as the bestower of wealth, progeny, house, and other material assets. Text 42. A woman therefore should consider her husband, her house, and her children to be the arrangement of the external energy of the Lord for her death, just as the sweet singing of the hunter is death for the deer. Text 40.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So yeah, in this section, you can see that how a living entity through bad association falls down, and again after death will enter into hellish condition of life. And bad association is very dangerous. That's what describes here. And also in this section, it is mentioned that one has to beware of the opposite sex. Attraction is there, and attraction to the opposite sex or same sex, whatever. So one has to be aware of it, because great people can be distracted from the path of spirituality because of this. And here, even Lord Brahma got bewildered once, and we know the story of Lord Shiva, how he got bewildered. So, however, Haridas Thakur, a great devotee, who chanted 192 rounds, 22 hours every day. When he was, when a prostitute came to disturb him, but he transformed that prostitute into a great devotee by his devotional power, by his chanting ability. This attraction is there, but Prabhupada writes in this purport, Cupid is, Cupid is attracting one another, but Cupid is being attracted by Krishna, and that's why Krishna's name is Madan Mohan. And because of the Cupid, one get attracted to another in this material world, opposite sex or same sex, because of the Cupid. But that same Cupid is attracted to Krishna. That's why his name is Madan Mohan. He is the enchanter of the Cupid. So we should get attracted to Krishna and Radha. That attraction power we should transfer to Radha and Krishna. And that way we can keep this attraction to minimum. And so there is a nice purport, actually, text 41 and 42, but I don't have time. You can read 41. In the 41, just wanted to mention that Prabhupada mentions, or this particular verse says that because of attraction to woman, man becomes a woman in the next life and vice versa. That is what Prabhupada says, because in the Gita, Krishna says, yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajantyante kalevaram. Whatever the state of being one thinks at the time of death, that state he will achieve. That state one will achieve. If a man is too attracted to woman, and at the time of his, the man is thinking about woman, then in the next life is guaranteed to born as a woman, and vice versa. And let's read the purport, text 42 purport, which is a very nice purport. Okay, Satish Prabhu, translation and purport.
Sure. Translation. A woman, therefore, should consider her husband, her house, and her children to be the arrangement of the external energy of the Lord for her death, just as the sweet singing of the hunter is death for the deer. Purport. In these instructions of Lord Kapila Deva, it is explained that not only is woman the gateway to hell for man, but man is also the gateway to the hell for woman. It is a question of attachment. A man becomes attached to a woman because of her service, her beauty, and many other assets. And similarly, a woman becomes attached to a man for his giving her a nice place to live, ornaments, dress, and children. It is a question of attachment for one another. As long as there either is attached to the other for such material enjoyment, the woman is dangerous for the man, and the man is also dangerous for the woman. But if the attachment is transferred to Krishna, both of them become Krishna conscious, and then marriage is very nice. Srila Rupa Goswami therefore recommends.
Don't worry. Go on.
Anasaktasya vishyan yatartham upayunjataha nirbandhaha Krishna sambandhe Yuktam Vairagyam Yuchate.
Excellent.
Man and woman should live together as householders in relationship with Krishna only for the purpose of discharging duties in the service of Krishna. Engage the children, engage the wife, and engage the husband all in Krishna conscious duties, and then all these bodily or material attachments will disappear. Since the medium is Krishna, the consciousness is pure and there is no possibility of degradation at any time. Hare Krishna.
So this is a very important paragraph here to sum up. Yeah, that attraction is there, but what does, Prabhupada says here, he quotes a wonderful verse by Rupa Goswami. Man and woman should live together as householders in relationship with Krishna only for the purpose of discharging duties in the service of Krishna. So one should get married and both husband and wife should live together and serve Krishna, engage in the service, devotional service, invite devotees to home, feed them, together preach. And together they can do so many wonderful activities, so many devotional activities. I've seen so many devotee couples, how they do wonderful service to the Lord. And then one should produce nice children. And then one should bring them up in Krishna consciousness, train them in Krishna consciousness. This is the way one can happily live in this world. So because Krishna is in the center, everything becomes devotional service. So rather than being detached, you become unattached. So that is there, whatever you have, you use it, you engage it in the service of the Lord. You have car, try and engage it in the service of the Lord. You have wealth, engage it in the service of the Lord. You have nice big house or a small house or whatever possession you have, engage it in the service of the Lord. That is real detachment. Engaging whatever we have in the service of the Lord is called the detachment. If we keep it to ourselves, if it is for our sense enjoyment, that becomes sense gratification. But whatever we have, if we use it for the Lord's service, even if you have millions and billions and a big palace, it is devotional service. Okay. And let's go back and we'll just read the last section. So someone can kindly volunteer me, please, from 43 till the end of the chapter. Any devotee, please.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes, go on, Prabhu.
43. Due to his particular type of body, the materialistic living entity wanders from one planet to another, following fruitive activities. In this way, he involves himself in fruitive activities and enjoys the result incessantly. Text 44. In this way, the living entity gets a suitable body with a material mind and senses, according to his fruitive activities. When the reaction of his particular activity comes to an end, that end is called death, and when a particular type of reaction begins, that beginning is called birth. Text 45 and 46 together. When the eyes lose their power to see color or form due to morbid affliction of the optic nerve, the sense of sight becomes deadened. The living entity, who is the seer of both the eyes and the sight, loses his power of vision. In the same way, when the physical body, the place where perception of objects occurs, is rendered incapable of perceiving, that is known as death. When one begins to view the physical body as one's very self, that is called birth. 47. Therefore, one should not view death with horror, nor have recourse to defining the body as soul, nor give way to exaggeration in enjoying the bodily necessities of life. Realizing the true nature of the living entity, one should move about in the world free from attachment and steadfast in purpose. Text 48. Endowed with right vision and strengthened by devotional service and a pessimistic attitude towards material identity, one should relegate his body to this illusory world through his reason. Thus, one can be unconcerned with this material world. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
just a couple of minutes, I will explain this section. And yeah, in this section, the definition of death and birth are given in a couple of ways. So what is birth and death? Death is defined as end of the reaction of living entity's particular activity. So when my reactions are ending, this body will end. That is death. Birth means beginning of a particular type of reaction. Because I had done some action in the past life, that for that action, the reaction has to begin. So beginning of a particular type of reaction is called birth. And another definition of death is given here. When the physical body, the place where the perception of objects occurs, is rendered incapable of perceiving. So when the physical body doesn't work any longer, that is death. And birth means when one begins to view the physical body as one's very self. So that is birth. And because there is no real birth and death, one should not be horrified, miserable, or eager to enjoy in this world. Because this living, this body, Krishna says in the Gita, so this body is always dead anyway, and the soul is always eternal. So body is matter. Matter is dead. It's inert. So living entity is always there, existed. So there is no birth and death according to that. So knowing this, one should not be so miserable and not so eager to enjoy this material world. But one should be endowed with proper vision and with proper reason, and having nice devotional service. One should live in this world and go back home, Godhead. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Yeah.
So we'll end that chapter there. So to sum up, how a living entity enters in a particular womb based on and under the supervision of the Supreme Lord, and based on one's previous karma, one is made to enter into a particular type of body, and then embryology is given after entering into a body, in various months. How various bodily parts are developed is given by Kapila Dev. In the 7th month, consciousness develops. And it is a very difficult situation being in the womb of mother, and if the living entity is fortunate, then that living entity will remember at least 100 past lives, and he repents for all his activities, sinful activities, and then the living entity offers prayers to the Supreme Lord. When the living entity comes out, also there is pain, and so how nobody can understand the baby's feeling, etc., etc. And also in the childhood, and when the living entity grows little old, also goes through pain, and through the bad association, one is completely gets degraded. But Prabhupada says that man and woman, they can live together and engage in the service of the Lord and go back to spiritual world. Whatever we have, if we engage in the devotional service of the Lord, that is real detachment. Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Any comments,
Hare
any
Krishna.
questions?
It was a wonderful class. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Vibol, Meenakshi Madhavi Mataji, thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna, Prabhuji.
Wow.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.